couple of years ago, I did a seminar on leadership, and within this seminar, one of the key concepts that was put forward by the teachers there was that leadership really isn't something that you could write an instruction booklet on. It isn't really a set of actions that you have to perform, so that when you perform these actions in a certain way that you can say, oh, now I'm being a leader. The core idea that they put forth in that seminar was that the act of leadership is really something that you're being called into. And the exact term that they used over there was that you, in order to be a leader, you have to be called into effective action. And that to be called into effective action as a leader, you need a context which can facilitate leadership. And whenever that adequate context for leadership is present, that no matter what the person is, that person will automatically act like a leader. To give an example of this, let's imagine two scenarios. One scenario, I'm walking down the boulevard by myself, and I'm just walking along, and all of a sudden I see someone in the river, a little kid that is drowning. Now let's move on to the other scenario. Let's say there are me and 4 other people. We're walking down the boulevard, and it's a very crowded boulevard. Lots of people are around, and all of a sudden I notice that a kid is drowning in the river, and he needs help. And in both scenarios the context is very similar. There's only slight difference in the sense that in the first scenario I'm alone, whereas in the second scenario I'm with a lot of people that also notice this kid drowning over there. This difference in context will determine whether or not I will be called into effective action and act like a leader in the sense that I'm going to save this kid. Because if I'm by myself, then of course I'm going to jump in and rescue this kid. But when there are a lot of other people around, I might be a little bit more hesitant to jump in the water, because maybe someone else is going to save this kid, and maybe someone else is better qualified to be saving this kid. So in that sense the context can really determine whether or not I will be called into effective action in saving this kid. And I'm not saying that it's necessarily a bad thing that I'm not going to jump into the water to save that kid when there are other people around. This is a common phenomenon. In psychology it's called the bystander effect, and it simply refers to the fact that whenever a lot of people are around, I am less inclined to help and rescue or assist another person, simply because of the fact that there will be social judgment going on about whether or not I'm doing the right thing, and also just uncertainty about whether or not I'm the best person to be qualified to be jumping in the water. Maybe there's someone walking around over there that's a security guard who would be suited for the job. So it really isn't about making one thing right or wrong. It's really just an illustration of whether or not my behavior will be called into effective action to act in a certain way. So back to the idea that context is the thing that calls my behavior into a certain direction. What they also stated within the seminar is that the context is for a large part influenced by what they called the future you're living into. What they really make clear is that my behavior is not so much determined by what just happens or what's going down right now, but more or less by what I'm expecting to happen right now. For example, if someone throws a rock at me, then I'm going to try to dodge that rock. Now you might say, like, oh, your behavior, you trying to dodge the rock, is determined by the fact that some guy just threw a rock at you. And that's a very legitimate explanation of that scenario. But in reality that really isn't what's actually going on, because what really is happening is that my mind is anticipating a certain future that I'm living into. I'm perceiving a rock flying in my direction, and my mind has certain experiences with flying rocks, and based upon that it's predicting a certain future, and based on that it's determining my behavior. And my dodging that rock really is a response to the anticipation of that rock flying in my direction, and me not wanting to have that future that I'm living into of having it hit my face. I would rather have a future in which the rock misses my head and I happen to dodge it. Now you may hear me explain a certain simple scenario like that and really say like, oh, what's the difference in explaining whether or not it was based on the past due to the fact that my dodging the rock was actually caused by the fact that someone threw it at me, or whether or not I'm anticipating a future in which I'm being hit and I want to avoid that future, and I'd rather have a future in which the rock misses my head. What's all the importance in this? Well, in the same way that you have a future that you're living into in a simple scenario like that, you also have a future that you're living into every day that you wake up. For example, if I wake up in the morning, I have a certain idea about what my day is going to be like. I have an idea of what activities I'm going to do, how I'm going to act, and I also have a similar idea for the more long-term vision of my life, and basically an expectation of how my future is going to look in a week, in a month, and in a year.